Hey everybody, welcome to this Haftarah. This is for the portion Kai Sarah, which means the life of Sarah. And our readings today are going to be in 1 Kings chapter 1, verses 1 through 31. So make sure you read that first before you get into this lesson. Well. In this week's Haftarah, we have all the makings of a great soap opera. Now, if you're not from the United States, do you know about soap operas? So they're melodramas, and they have exaggerated characters and exciting events, and those events are like intended to appeal to the emotions. So soap operas were originally radio dramas, but they were sponsored by soap companies, and that's where they got the name. So, our soap opera in this Haftarah, we have mystery and intrigue. We have a plot to usurp the king. We have a beautiful young maiden who was chosen specifically to warm the king. We have several plot twists and turns. But before we get into all of that, let me talk to you about how this Haftarah ties in with the Torah. Okay, so the Torah portion speaks about Abraham's old age, right? And how he seeks a wife for his successor, who's Isaac. Well, in a similar way, the Haftarah talks about how King David was old and he had arranged for his successor to be Solomon. So the tie-in specifically between these two, between the Torah and the Haftarah, that comes from the phrase that in English says, "And David was old and had come in days." Now, some of your versions will say that he was old and advanced in age, right? So this is like a twin statement to that of Abraham in the Torah portion. Now, on the surface of this phrase that's repeated both with Abraham and with David, old and advanced in days, right? That seems kind of redundant, right? So the question is, okay, is this maybe Hebrew poetry, the type that's called parallelism? Well, not necessarily so, say the sages. So in this widely studied Jewish commentary that was dated to the year 1730, it says, "Fortunate is the man who has come in days," or advanced in days. So let me read a little bit about that particular commentary, because I think it's kind of interesting. So it says that when a tzaddik dies, that's a righteous person, his days are willing to come in front of God for accounting of his Torah and his mitzvos. That would be his deeds, his good deeds. On the other hand, the wicked person's days try to hide. They're embarrassed to come to God for reckoning at the little good that they've done and the evil that they've caused. Therefore, sometimes one may be old, but one's days aren't coming to God voluntarily. They have to be brought. Or sometimes one's days are willing to come as they are, full of Torah and mitzvos, good deeds, but one is not so advanced in years. David, however, had both factors. He was old in years, and was accomplished in days, so that they would have come easily to God. And the same was true of Abraham. Now, that's just a story, but I think it's a good lesson to think of our deeds as either very willing and excited to come to God, or hesitant because they know that they're deficient. So another parallel between the Torah portion and the Haftarah is that they both speak of a son rightfully receiving from a father, right? So in the Torah portion, Abraham, it says, through Isaac, this is to Abraham, it says, "Through Isaac your descendants shall be named." And this Haftarah ends with David ensuring that Solomon will in fact be the heir. So both Solomon and Isaac, they stand as heads to a dynasty, and they both are prophetic depictions of Messiah. Okay, so let's get back to the soap opera. There are some key players that we need to look at first. Okay, here are the key players in this Haftarah. We have King David, and he's old and infirm. We have his queen, Bathsheba, and she's the mother to Solomon, and Solomon is the rightful heir to the throne. Then we have Abishag, the Shunammite, who was carefully selected to tend to David, but the text explicitly says that there was no sexual intimacy between them. Then we have the royal prophet who's loyal to David. That's Nathan. And then there's Adonijah. So he's the fourth son of David, but because the first three had died, he's the current eldest living son, and he's the one who's plotting to take the throne. So this Haftarah basically tells the story of the succession of Solomon to the throne. And the mystery and the intrigue, of course, are that this other son, Adonijah, the eldest now, leads a conspiracy to usurp that throne. Now, Nathan the prophet, he understands the important messianic significance of appointing David's heir, right? So as prophet, he would have had glimpses of the coming messianic kingdom and the coming Messiah. So let me read in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 16. So this is God speaking to Nathan, or Nathan speaking for God. I guess maybe would be a different, better way of saying that. Talking to David. When your days are filled and you rest with your fathers, I will raise up your seed after you, who comes from your inward parts, and shall establish his reign. He does build a house for my name, and I shall establish the throne of his reign forever. I am to be his father, with a capital F, and he is my son. If he does perversely, I'll reprove him with the rod of men and with the blows of the sons of men. But my loving commitment does not turn aside from him, as I turned it aside from Shaul, whom I removed from before you. And your house and your reign are to be steadfast forever before you. Your throne is established forever. Now, these are the promises of God's covenant with David, right? And this includes an everlasting kingdom ruled by a son of David. Now, the prophet Nathan knew that God had chosen Solomon. So in this Haftarah, when Nathan realizes what the other son, the eldest son, Adonijah, is up to, trying to usurp the throne, it's interesting what his initial response is. His initial response is to go to the queen, Bathsheba. And he goes to her to enlist her help and her influence to warn King David of what's kind of like going on behind his back. Now, I love that the scriptures record Bathsheba's role in all of this, because now we can see just how crucial of a factor that she is in Solomon's rightful succession to the throne. And this shows that she's a powerful woman, and that she's truly used by God to influence the course of the Davidic dynasty. And it's also really cool that we can read that David also counts on her. He trusts her counsel, and he pledges again to her that her son, Solomon, the son they have together, right, that he will be the heir. Now, Bathsheba goes into the king first to tell him about um, Adonijah's plot. And then Nathan goes in to kind of corroborate her story, right? And presumably at this point, Bathsheba leaves the room because, and this is significant, the first time that David speaks in this Haftarah, what does he say? He says, call for Bathsheba. So not only does Nathan immediately look to her during this crisis, but so too does the king. And it's nice to see that depicted in Scripture, right? Because Bathsheba doesn't really speak often in the Bible. She's not like front and center in the pages. And what we do know of her in the beginning, there was some controversy, right? But in this Haftarah, it highlights the importance of her counsel and her influence. And this encourages me, as I hope that it encourages you, especially you who don't necessarily see yourself as front and center in your spheres of influence. I hope this encourages you who maybe feel like you're a little more invisible than what you'd hope to be. You know, as women, we have powerful roles to play in the grand melodramas, the soap operas of life. And on those days when you feel like that you maybe have very little real influence, I want you to know that loud and front and center isn't the only way to influence. So how about today you ask God to show you your powerful influence in the lives of those around you? Because when you do that and he shows you, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. So that's what I have for this Haftarah. And next week I will see you in the Haftarah called Toldot.